Life in Israel is returning to normal as schools reopened on Monday and IDF Home Front Command lifted most of the restrictions put in place in the wake of the Iranian attack against Israel. Meanwhile, the War Cabinet deliberated for several hours on Sunday and Monday, but still remains split on a potential response. The details in the following report.
Shortly after midnight Monday, IDF Home Front Command lifted the majority of restrictions placed in the wake of the Iranian attack. Schools and educational activities reopened, and large gatherings with no limitations were also reinstated. Ben Gurion International Airport already reopened on Sunday, and by Monday morning, numerous flights were arriving and departing on schedule. However, Israeli officials are emphasizing that this event is not over, and request that Israelis remain diligent and follow the guidelines posted by the Home Front Command. As such, the War Cabinet met for several hours Sunday and reconvened on Monday, but still remains divided over a potential Israeli response to the Islamic Republic. While there seems to be a general consensus that an Israeli response is needed, there are said to be divisions over the scope and timing of such a retaliation. According to multiple reports, there were already discussions on launching a counterattack the same night as the Iranian strike, but this was ultimately rejected by the War Cabinet. Meanwhile, the White House has publicly said it would not support or take part in an Israeli counterstrike on Iran. Now several options remain on the table. Israel can decide to respond in the coming days, or it could decide to delay its response and try to secure more international support for such a move. Additionally, it could heed the calls of its Western allies and try to retaliate on the diplomatic front. Yet, Israel has made clear the Islamic Republic should expect a response one way or another.
And pressure is mounting on Israel to refrain from a counterattack on the Islamic Republic of Iran after Tehran launched over 300 missiles and suicide drones against Israel. The UN Security Council met Sunday to discuss the ongoing Iranian threat as Israel's ambassador to the UN said Israel has every right to retaliate. World leaders on Monday urged restraint from Jerusalem following the massive Iranian attack on Saturday night.
Well, I think they're perfectly justified to think they should respond because they have been attacked. But we are urging them as friends to think with head as well as heart, to be smart as well as tough, and to recognize Iran suffered this defeat because the attack was a failure. The world can see what a malign influence they are. And I think that the right thing to do is not to escalate.
Mais donc nous avons condamné, nous sommes intervenus et aujourd'hui nous allons tout faire pour éviter l'embrasement, c'est-à-dire l'escalade. Et donc essayer de convaincre Israël qu'il ne faut pas répondre en escaladant, mais plutôt isoler l'Iran, réussir à convaincre les pays de la région que l'Iran est un danger, accroître les sanctions, renforcer la pression sur les activités nucléaires et puis retrouver un chemin de paix dans la région.
The US, UK and France, who all stood by Israel as part of an international coalition to defend against the Iranian attack, urged their ally to exercise restraint, hoping instead to seek to isolate Iran on the diplomatic stage. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also called for restraint.
Madam President, the Middle East is on the brink. The people of the region are confronting a real danger of a devastating, full-scale conflict. Now is the time to defuse and de-escalate. Now is the time for maximum restraint.
On Sunday, the UN Security Council convened at Israel's request, calling on the Council to condemn Iran's attack and to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization.
Why have you not used all possible means to condemn Iran and demand compliance? Why have you instead rolled out the red carpet for these genocidal jihadists? Why do you treat them as if they are interested in de-escalation when you know that the opposite is true? This attack crossed every red line, and Israel reserves the legal right to retaliate. We are not a frog in boiling water. We are a nation of lions. Following such a massive and direct attack on Israel, the entire world, let alone Israel, cannot settle for inaction. We will defend our future.
And joining us now with more on the Iranian attack and its aftermath is Flur Kassan, Special Envoy at Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Flur, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, Flur, before we talk about the aftermath and the world calls for restraint, I want to ask you, as the former mayor of Jerusalem, as a resident of Jerusalem, how you felt when you saw the missiles and drones flying over the skies of Jerusalem.
Well, that's a great question, because normally in Jerusalem, we've gotten used to the fact that missiles are not sent to Jerusalem, mainly because of the Al-Aqsa Temple Mount complex, which is supposed to be the Muslims' third most holiest site in the world, and also because 40% of the population of Jerusalem is Muslim Arab. And so for many years, we've gotten used to not being a city that is under rocket attack. But that night, to see the rocket attacks over Jerusalem and the fact that it was our Air Force, the Israeli Air Force, who intercepted weapons, intercepted missiles that could have fallen and destroyed the Temple Mount, I think that's something nobody would have ever imagined to have seen.
Mm-hmm. And now, what do you make of the calls world leaders, the world leaders' calls to show restraint on the side of Israel?
Well, as usual, we always see double standards. And my question is, where were the calls for restraint to Iran, who made it very clear already for 2 weeks that they were going to be having their revenge attack on Jerusalem? Where were the calls for their restraint? Who would have imagined that this attack would have had such an enormous scale of over 300 missiles? Nobody spoke to Iran about it, but now we are now being asked to use restraint. I want to say a few things. Firstly, Israel never acts impulsively. Even after the worst attack that we had since the Holocaust on the 7th of October, it took us 2 weeks to go into Gaza. And just like we always look things over, think things through, strategize and plan, we never act impulsively. I don't believe that Israel will act impulsively this time. And if they had, they would have already attacked.
Because it's interesting. On the one hand, Israel did have incredible support from its allies in the West, even Jordan, and according to some reports, Saudi Arabia. Now these same allies are once again calling for restraint and urging for what they call a diplomatic approach. But isn't that what they've been doing until now? I mean, clearly that approach has not worked.
Well, it's just very interesting how everybody's on Israel's side. We always have diplomatic wins when we're being attacked, when we're the victim. The minute that we turn it on and the minute we try and defend ourselves, that is when the whole world says, whoa, 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 whoa. It's okay, we're with you when you're the victim, but when you fight back for yourselves, when you want to defend your people, we're not going to be with you anymore. And that is, again, this horrible double standard that Israel always has to live with. But ultimately, the country has to do what's best for our country, what's best to defend our people. What happened last 2 nights ago could have been a complete massacre and genocide had we not had the defense operation system that we had, and of course, friends from our allies. But mark my words, it doesn't mean that next time we may be as successful, and that's why Israel has to prepare for all eventualities and essentially do away with the existential threat that the Islamic Republic of Iran poses. And what people don't realize is that the threat is not just to Israel. The Islamic Republic poses a threat to the entire free world. They are today 1930s Germany. They are today Hitler. And people don't seem to have woken up from that fact.
Mm-hmm. And Israel certainly is on the front lines and today is contemplating a response of some sort to the Iranian regime. But can it do it alone? Does it risk international isolation should it attack or respond to Iran?
Iran is a massive country. When you look at Iran on the map and you look at the population size and you look how they've been arming themselves and preparing themselves, if there was an all-out war with Iran, we certainly couldn't do it and shouldn't do it alone, because Iran doesn't just pose a threat to Israel, like I said. But we can do many things, like we've done over the years, to disarm their capability. We've been doing it many, many years with their nuclear program. Many times our incredible spy network have really chalked up a lot of wins in Iran. I don't know. I'm not a military expert. I don't know what the attack will look like. But everything that Israel does is defensive. We don't do anything to kill people. We do everything to defend our people.
And, I also want to ask about Gaza, the situation in Gaza, because, there's still a war ongoing against Hamas. The U.S. also holding Israel back from completing its mission in Rafah. I mean, isn't it in the U.S. interest for Israel to defeat Hamas, for Israel to defeat the Islamic Republic of Iran once and for all?
It's in everybody's interest. It's just that people don't have courage anymore to do what needs to be done. And Israel stands alone in the courage front. When you look at the bravery of our young men and women on the ground, people never thought that this generation would stand up to the plate the way that they have done, which is incredible. And so, yes, everybody wants us to get rid of this one and that one, but not everybody is willing to be involved. But, you know, if they're holding us back from Rafah, if the world is holding us back from Rafah, at least bring us our hostages. That is the most important thing. Then they have absolutely no justification to hold us back if they're not going to deliver our hostages.
Absolutely. Let's hope that we can bring the hostages home. Flur, always lovely having you on. Thank you so much for your analysis today. And moving on, day 192 of the war in Gaza, and Israeli officials are emphasizing that despite the Iranian attack, eliminating Hamas and bringing the hostages home remain a top priority. ILTV's Devo Klein has the full report.
It is now day 192 of the war in Gaza, and following the Iranian attack, IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari emphasized that the IDF is still committed to its original goals, returning the hostages and eliminating the remaining Hamas battalions.
Even while under attack from Iran, we have not lost sight, not for one moment, of our critical mission in Gaza to rescue our hostages from the hands of Iran's proxies, Hamas.
On the northern front, IDF fighter jets have been precisely striking multiple Hezbollah military compounds, including a weapons manufacturing site in the area of Nabichit, deep inside Lebanon. The IDF is continuing to operate diligently against Hezbollah, taking down infrastructures also in the area of Jabaa in southern Lebanon. These strikes comes as a response to the non-stop rockets fired by Hezbollah over the past few days, directed at northern Israel. A total of over 100 rockets have been fired at mostly evacuated communities in the north. There was minimal damage to a house in the northern community of Margaliot. The Hezbollah rocket fire over the weekend occurred parallel to the Iranian drone offensive.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple. And joining us now with more on the war in Gaza and the hostages is Jerusalem Bureau Chief of JNS, Alex Trayman. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Alex, all eyes have been on Iran, but the IDF insisting now that the war in Gaza and the hostages are still a top priority. Where do we stand now? I mean, it seems like little progress has been made in Gaza in the past few weeks.
Correct. About a week ago, Israel took several of its battalions out of the Gaza Strip, only leaving one single remaining battalion in the middle of the Strip and a key corridor between the north and the south. And we've seen as a result, Hamas is spreading its tentacles back out across areas of the Strip that the IDF had previously conquered. The Rafah operation, which the War Cabinet and Netanyahu have said is essential to finishing the war, has been essentially put on hold. There's reports today that perhaps the date for that attack, which hasn't been launched, has been delayed further following this attack from Iran. And questions regarding what the strategy should be now that Iran has changed the strategic balance and changed the game. The question is whether Rafah should just be put on the back burner while Israel has more intensive enemies to fight, or whether they're going to postpone against Iran and going to go now full force into Rafah.
Mm-hmm. An interesting decision. And, you know, we saw a major rift between Washington and Jerusalem over the Rafah operation. And then U.S. President Biden, in a move that I think surprised many, stood beside Israel in the face of, the Iranian attack. And many hope that this will translate into perhaps more support in defeating Hamas, in the U.S. perhaps giving Israel the green light for a Rafah operation. What do you make of this?
I think the U.S. has been fairly consistent in their approach that they are interested in bolstering Israel's defense. They don't want to see Israel be attacked, because if Israel gets attacked, and it gets attacked hard, then Israel will respond. And they're trying to prevent further outgrowth of war. So what happens is that they will arrange for missile defense against Iran. They will send their aircraft carriers on October 8th over to Israel to deter Hezbollah from firing at Israel, but at the same time putting immense pressure on Israel not to attack Hezbollah, not to attack Iran in the face of what was one of the largest missile and drone barrages in the history of warfare against the Jewish state.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, Israel cannot afford not to secure victory in Gaza, cannot afford not to respond to Iran. But yet it can also not afford to isolate itself diplomatically. I mean, really a tough situation. What do you think can or should be done then moving forward? Because, you know, something has to give.
Well, Israel is already finding itself isolated diplomatically, and that's even as it goes to all efforts to reduce the amount of civilian casualties in Gaza to historic proportion, even as Israel allows historic amounts of humanitarian aid to enter into an enemy population during war. So I think everything that Israel is doing in order to try to maintain diplomatic cover and broad support may not be working the way Israel had intended it to work or had hoped that it would work. And I think that for Israel's diplomatic support, what they really needs to do is to do what you said, which is to achieve quick, decisive victories in all the fronts. That includes inside Gaza, that includes inside southern Lebanon, and that includes Iran itself.
All right, Alex, let's hope that Israel is able to achieve a quick and decisive victory, as you said. Thank you so much for your analysis today. And now, 2 years ago, Yaakov Harush, a 35-year-old father of 4 who lives in the town of Shlomit, which is nestled between the Egyptian and Gaza borders, opened a matzah factory in Netivot. He employed 50 people in the factory and would usually start production and sales right after Sukkot. But this year, after October 7th, Harush was called up to his paratrooper unit to serve in Gaza, while his family was evacuated. When he finally returned to his business after 2.5 critical months of suspended operations, the outlook was dire. Tremendous production time and revenue had been lost. But then, Jewish National Fund USA provided a vital lifeline in order for 5,500 boxes of matzah. And today, thanks to that timely intervention, all 50 employees are back at work. And in partnership with Jewish National Fund USA's affiliate Makom, a coalition empowering Negev and Galilee communities, the matzah will reach evacuated families just in time for the holiday. And so joining us now are Yaakov Harush himself and Shosh Mitzman, Development Officer for Makom, to discuss this inspiring Passover story. So first of all, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
So, Yaakov, I want to start with you. Can you perhaps describe what it was like having to shut down, the factory for these critical months during Passover preparations, all the while being called up to reserve duty? I mean, how dire was the situation?
So, we'll start from the events of October 7th. As someone who lives on the border with Gaza, we went through horrific days of October 7th, 8th, and the following week. Afterwards, we had to be evacuated, and we were dealing with the mourning of the loss of our friends and close neighbors. Our head obviously was not in the factory at all. And the following weeks afterwards, being called up to fight in Gaza, my heart was torn between fighting for our homeland in Gaza, trying to save lives and try to get out the hostages and take out Hamas. But on the other hand, in the back here was always what's going to be with my business. And for many, many months, we couldn't work. And when we did start working, we didn't have any orders. And it was a big crisis. It was all my savings and everything that I saved for. I invested in this incredible factory that we opened with 50 workers, which is a lot. A lot of people will live in the area. And so it was very, very critical for us.
Mm-hmm. And now that the Jewish National Fund USA's order 5,500 boxes of matzah, it's allowed you to ramp up production again. What does it mean for you, for your employees, for the evacuated families who will actually be able to receive the matzah? I see you brought a box with you today as well.
Yeah, this is our matzah. Our matzah is actually all handmade. That's why we need 50 workers. And the workers who live on the border with Gaza, who went through everything we went through in the last war. It means that they can put food on their kids' tables. This order of matzah will pay for their salaries, will help me pay for the different debts that we have. And it's huge. And obviously for the evacuees, as someone who was evacuated myself, we just returned a month ago to our community. I know what it means for a family who's not home to receive such a thing. It's first of all, it's heartwarming, and second of all, really helps to get the matzah, which is not cheap, to your Seder table. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And Shosh, I want to turn to you. Can you tell us a little bit, on your side about the types of communities that Makom is supporting for this Passover holiday?
Well, I too will begin from October 7th because Makom stepped up and got involved on October 8th. And what we did is we spread out our wings to all the people that needed us. And it didn't really matter if you were from the south or the north or have been through atrocities or not. Anyone that needed assistance, we were there at the hotels assisting throughout communities that embraced displaced families. And we've been busy since. So now for Passover, it's almost natural for us to just continue the work that we've been doing since October 8th. And I'm talking about over 100,000 people that are being assisted, and even those that still went home, though they went home, they're definitely not back to their normal life. And any kind of assistance that we can give, we're there.
And why do you think that Makom was called upon to help distribute the matzahs?
So Makom is an organization. We are a network of 280 communities across Israel. And we're an organization of volunteers. These are people that go above and beyond in each of these communities to try to help those that are in need. Our 20,000 volunteers is something that we do on a regular basis, whether it's youth at risk or Holocaust survivors, we're there to assist. And like I said, since October 7th, we've been extremely busy with the displaced families, and the ability for us to already be there on the ground has been extremely natural for us. And just now, I was with Yedidia at the factory. We had families that are still evacuated from the northern border, and they received all these boxes of matzah, which was extremely, extremely helpful, thanks to Jewish National Fund USA.
So an incredibly amazing initiative from the Jewish National Fund USA, from Makom and Yedidia. Happy Passover to you, to your family, to the factory workers.
Thank you. Happy Passover to everyone. And may we, just like we came out of Egypt with freedom, continue the freedom and safety in our homeland, and prayers for the hostages to come back as soon as we can and have them home with us, with their families, to celebrate Pesach.
Amen to that.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with lows around 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see more clear skies, seeing highs of about 31 degrees Celsius or 88 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channel, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.